And on a side note, I go to a church that is sort of rooted in Calvinism, and so I get into these conversations all the time. Loving God with our heart. That's a difficult one, and it could be confusing because in the Old Testament, God clearly says that He is going to transform our hearts. Right? When he spoke to the nation of Israel, He told them, sometime in the future, He's gonna do a work in their heart, transform their heart, and so basically He's gonna make them love Him. Right? So does that mean that like I don't have any ability to actually love God with my heart unless He does this work, like reaches into my soul or something and does this work in my heart? That's a interesting concept. And on a side note, I go to a church that is sort of rooted in Calvinism, and so I get into these conversations all the time, about how God is actually achieving this work in the heart. So I'm going to give a little explanation about it as to where I am right now and my understanding about it. Hopefully this helps. But yeah, it's stated that way in the Old Testament, right? But then also in the Old Testament, we see, like for example, when God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, we see the process that He's using there. And there's no indication that He's actually sort of, reaching into Pharaoh's, consciousness or something and making him harder towards God. He uses Moses. He uses the miracles. He uses these orders, right, to let the people go. He uses threats, let the people go or else. And as a reaction to that, you see Pharaoh's heart growing harder and harder and harder. God takes the credit for that. Absolutely. God says, I hardened Pharaoh's heart. But when we look at the process, it's like, okay, I can cause an accident on the road in two main ways. Okay, if I'm driving my car, I can just, slam into someone else, right? I've caused an accident. Or I could maybe not be paying attention, maybe on my phone or something, texting or talking or whatever, not paying attention, run a red light, and then someone swerving to avoid me ends up, running into a pole or crossing into the other lane or something like that and gets into an accident. Guess what? If there's a cop sitting at that same intersection and he sees everything that happens, he's pulling me over and I'm going to be charged for causing that accident. Even though I wasn't directly involved, I went through the red light. I keep going, no damage. I'm not involved directly, but I still caused it. So the blame is on me. And I think it's the same thing when God is hardening people's heart, especially in the Old Testament, right? Yes, He's absolutely taking credit for it, but it doesn't mean that He has to, reach into our soul and, be like a puppet master and manipulate and do things that way. Look, it could very well be, like I said, this is my understanding of it today, right? If I'm wrong about this, I will come here and I will say I'm wrong about this, okay? It could very well be that God is actually reaching into our soul and doing this work from within. Sure, okay? When I read the Bible, I just don't see that happening. It's not consistent with God's character, right? There's all this time. God is always using people to get His will done. God's will is always getting done, but He uses people and He uses the environment, He uses everything to get His will done, right? And so that goes into a bigger argument about free will and all these things, right? But that's the way I see it, because I do believe that we have free will. Okay, I believe it's essential for our relationship with God in terms of loving Him, right? Different conversation. But I see clearly that God can take credit for these things because why? He's in control of reality, all of it. But what I'm saying is because He's in control of everything, God can get His will done through a variety of means, right? So when it comes to loving God with our heart, He directs our heart towards Him by giving us revelation, okay? Whether it's through nature, whether it's through someone else, okay? He can steer our heart towards Him. And then it's on us when we get that illumination or that revelation that God is actually reaching out to us, or maybe He reveals what He's already done for us. Then our desire is going to be to love Him. We got to remember that when the Bible talks about the heart, right? It's oftentimes talking about, the things that we desire, right? Our heart is for something, meaning that this is something that we desire. So when it says, we should have a heart for God, right? It's talking about we should desire to love God. Okay. And that's why, like I said, it's the most difficult thing I think for us to do, because the heart is actually by nature turned away from God, bent against God, right? The heart is spiritually dead. So it doesn't really want God, it doesn't desire God. When God reveals things to us, okay, when he illuminates us, that is going to have an effect on the heart. The heart is either going to get hardened towards that and resist it, or the heart is going to turn to that. Okay. And here's the thing, God knows every heart. So when he brings illumination to a person, he already knows how they're going to react. So this is why he can take credit for what he's doing. He takes complete credit. He's the one who softens the heart. He's the one who transforms it from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh. Because we're all born with this heart of stone. We're all born with a heart that's rejecting God. But through his revelation, our heart can be transformed. And that's where we get this ability to love God with all of our heart. It means that we now have a desire for God. And I think it's the most obvious way where we can know whether or not we actually love God. If we have this desire for God and for the things of God, then we know for sure that we actually love God. And when we have that, I think the other things fall into place. When we have a desire for God, then our soul, our consciousness is going to make a decision to love God, right? Even when it's hard, even when we think that, God is maybe putting me through some stuff, right? Our soul is going to love God. We're going to love God with our mind. If we love God with our heart and we have a desire for God, we're going to love God with our mind. We're going to want to spend time in his word. We're going to want to read. We're going to have this desire to read and get to know him better, love him with our mind, understand him, figure things out. Figure out why he did this, why he's doing that, why these promises about the future, the kingdom of God, like all of these things. We're going to want to do this with our mind if we have this desire and we love God with our heart. And of course, our strength, we're going to put effort into it, whatever we have to do, whether it's a time commitment, whether, we have to go places, we have to go to church, or we have to go serve here or do this. Okay. We are going to put forth the effort if and when we love God with our heart, we have a desire for God. I think everything else really falls into place.